disadvantaged young people, it was because I was so acutely aware.
And in those days, I remember there was a great deal of skepticism. And
he was the king's shadow, until one day he wasn't. Fired overnight, scrubbed from records, and replaced in total silence. But what Charles did next has royal watchers stunned. Rumors are flying, and nothing adds up. Don't blink. Subscribe now, because what you're about to hear will leave you speechless. Daniel Hunt had been a constant presence by King Charles's side for over 15 years. A man known for his quiet focus and dedication. Every public event, private trip, or palace ceremony, Daniel was always just a few steps behind the king, alert and prepared. Then one morning, he was simply gone. There was no farewell event, no public statement full of praise, just a short message from the palace saying Daniel Hunt was no longer in service. That was it. No explanation, no details. Staff members who had seen him just the day before said nothing seemed unusual. He was calm, professional, like always. But by the next morning, his belongings were gone, and his name was removed from internal schedules. Even stranger, there were no pictures of him left on any official palace archives, no mentions in recent updates. It was as if he had never worked there at all. People inside the palace began whispering, why would someone so loyal, so trusted, be erased so completely? That wasn't normal, especially not for someone who had spent more than a decade protecting the king. But this wasn't just a job termination. It felt intentional, quiet, final. And while the world barely noticed his disappearance at first, those closest to the royal household couldn't stop talking about it. What could possibly lead to a sudden and silent dismissal of the one man King Charles had always trusted? Whatever it wasn't just routine, it was something deeper. Before Daniel became a shadow to the king, he had built a reputation for being one of the sharpest security professionals in Britain. He didn't get there by luck. He worked his way up through elite training programs, dealing with high-pressure situations that required precision and nerves of steel. His skills weren't just physical, he had an uncanny ability to read a room, spotting unusual behavior, sensing a potential risk before it even appeared. Years ago, during a tightly packed royal event, someone in the crowd made a suspicious movement. While others were distracted, Daniel was already moving. In seconds, he had positioned himself between the threat and King Charles, diffusing the situation before it ever reached the headlines. That's who Daniel Hunt was. He learned the king's habits, schedule, and moods. He knew when to step back and when to step in. His quiet presence offered a sense of calm. Over the years, he became more than just security. He became a silent force of stability. So when that presence suddenly vanished, it wasn't just strange, it was unsettling. And for those who truly understood the weight of his role, replacing him wasn't going to be easy. As word of Daniel's quiet exit began to spread, those inside the palace started to piece together the moments leading up to it. People recalled how, in the final weeks, Daniel seemed different, not in how he worked, but in how alert he had become. He appeared more watchful, as if expecting something. And then came that unusual meeting with the king, longer than usual, closed door, and silent afterward. When Daniel walked out of that room, witnesses say he looked distant, not defeated, just changed. Shortly after, his office was cleared. He was gone before sunrise. What really raised suspicion wasn't the exit itself, it was the way it was handled. Staff were told not to speak about it. Some claimed his name was removed from internal systems within hours. Photos from recent events were quietly updated to remove or blur his figure. It was as though someone didn't want people remembering he was ever there. People inside the palace whispered that Daniel had learned something he shouldn't have, and that knowledge may have been the reason for his quiet dismissal. But if Daniel was that valuable, wouldn't he have been kept close? Unless the thing he discovered made that impossible. Whatever happened in that meeting with the king left a mark. A decision had been made, and it wasn't just about replacing a bodyguard. It was about covering something up. Daniel's departure didn't just create gossip, it created gaps, immediate ones. Security protocols that had run like clockwork for years suddenly felt shaky. Event schedules that had always run smoothly now faced delays. Guards looked unsure, briefings were longer, and movements once seamless now felt awkward. There was no one to guide them. Daniel had always been the quiet glue holding operations together. With him gone, the routines that had become second nature were now missing a key piece. At public events, the shift was even more obvious. New guards, no matter how experienced, couldn't replicate Daniel's instincts. Crowds noticed, reporters noticed. Even royal fans commented online about how off things felt. Inside the palace, tensions were rising. Queen Camilla, known for her attention to detail, began asking more questions about security changes. Staff near her noticed a clear change. She was more watchful, more guarded. And while the king himself remained silent, his expressions at public events seemed different, less at ease. Behind the scenes, meetings grew more frequent. Senior staff reviewed every protocol. There were whispers that even the smallest details were being double-checked. It was clear the system wasn't functioning the way it used to. And if one man's exit could shake things this much, what did that say about how vital Daniel really was. As the pressure mounted, King Charles finally acted. He surprised everyone by stepping directly into the situation. Traditionally, a monarch wouldn't personally handle staffing or security audits, but this time was different. At a private meeting with his closest advisors, Charles walked in with a calm but firm expression. He made it clear he wasn't just watching anymore. He announced that he would oversee the search for a new head of security himself. Everyone in the room was stunned. This wasn't protocol. This was personal, and he didn't stop there. Charles ordered a full-scale review of his entire security system. Every routine, every guard's role, every emergency response, everything was to be reevaluated. He wanted answers. Then came the twist no one expected. The king reached out to Daniel Hunt. What was said in that meeting is still unknown, but those who saw Daniel leaving the palace that day noticed something unusual. He didn't look angry or defeated. He looked calm, purposeful, like a man who had said what he needed to say. Afterward, Charles changed even more. He took a greater interest in day-to-day operations. He made it clear he would only trust those who earned it. There were rumors that Charles was even considering bringing in someone from outside the royal circle. The message was clear. Trust had been shaken, and King Charles was determined to restore it on his terms. Through all of this, Daniel Hunt never spoke publicly. Not once. He didn't do interviews. He didn't release statements. He didn't even post anything. The man who had been so visible next to King Charles for years vanished into silence. Those who knew him weren't surprised. Daniel was always professional, always quiet, always controlled. When he was told his service had ended, witnesses say he stood silently, listened, nodded, and walked away. No questions, no arguments. He had spent over a decade preparing for threats, planning responses, and putting someone else's safety first. But when it ended, he didn't look back. Was he hurt? Maybe, but he never showed it. He knew this job was never forever. Still, he hadn't expected it to end without warning. So why the silence? Some say it was loyalty. Others believe he was protecting something or someone. But one thing is certain, Daniel knew more than he let on, and the fact that he said nothing might say more than if he had spoken at all. Inside the royal family, Daniel's absence didn't go unnoticed. Prince William, who had grown up watching Daniel guard his father, reportedly began taking more control over his own security. He asked more questions, held longer briefings, became more cautious. Queen Camilla was said to be uneasy. Those working near her noticed she paid extra attention to new security staff, watching how they worked, how they moved. It wasn't fear, it was caution. Other family members seemed to accept the change, but that didn't mean they weren't concerned, because deep down, they all knew the truth. When someone as trusted as Daniel is removed without explanation, it leaves behind a question, one that's hard to shake. Daniel may be gone, but his absence is still felt. New guards stand where he once did. New routines try to match the precision he brought, but those who remember him know it's not the same. He wasn't just a bodyguard, he was a part of the palace itself. And now, in the quiet moments between events, there's a space that no one has truly filled. And if you're still curious, click on the next video on your screen. The palace may be silent, but the clues keep coming. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned. This story is far from over.